And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel, Jeremiah, and Bucky Brooks.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Bucky here. Buck, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, not too much. Getting ready for the combine. It's crazy how it kind of snuck up on us. We talk about a little more than a week away from being in Indianapolis, getting a chance to really see the 2020 draft class in front of us and see how these guys perform. And obviously with the change in format, going to prime time, quarterbacks being on display early, a lot of conversation about the signal callers that will have an opportunity to show their wares in Indianapolis.
And that's what we're doing today. We are going to preview the quarterbacks for the Combine. Going to take a look at really what plays in the NFL right now. I want to revisit a conversation that we've had previously on the pod, and I know Bucky's written about it in his notebook, about the whole scorers versus shooters philosophy change we've seen in the league. So we'll continue to weave that in through our discussion as we look at some of these top guys and what we're looking to see them accomplish there at the Combine. But, Buck, I got to tell you, it's that time of year where you just like from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night. I feel like I'm watching tape or I'm taking notes, I'm reading, whatever I've got to do to try and get ready for this thing. But it's all encompassing. And I tweeted this out the other day, so I figured I'd pay off the story because I had a little minor procedure with not a big deal, but you have to get some of the fun, the what do you call it, anesthesia, right?
Yeah.
So you're a little bit out of it.
Yes.
So I come out of this little procedure. I'm in, and then apparently we go to the recovery room. Then I get in the car, my wife, and we're driving home. And we get home, and I said, "Hey, did the doctor ever come and visit with us after?" Because I don't. And she said, "Yeah. He came in there for like 10 minutes." I'm like, I don't remember that. She said, "Do you remember getting in the car?" I'm like, "No, I don't remember anything." I said, "Well, what did he say?" So she tells me, what he said about the instructions of what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, did I say anything to him? Because I don't remember any of this. She said, "Yeah, you told him that Tua was going to the Chargers." I'm like, "What?" Like I haven't talked to anybody at the Chargers that said they're taking Tua. I have no knowledge that Tua is gonna be a member of the Chargers. But apparently in my subconscious, I've already committed to the fact that Tua Tagovailoa is going to be a member of the Chargers, and I've told this doctor after this procedure. So put it to bed. If you're ever wondering, how this thing's going to shake out with the quarterback carousel, check one off the list because Tua is going to be a Charger apparently.
That's unbelievable that you've had experience. I've had surgeries and had similar experiences. Like they say, like when you come out of that anesthesia, like the truth serum impacts you. I've had religious experiences coming out of it. I've had crazy things. It's one of those things that brings you to the edge. And I don't know what it is about the anesthesia, but it's different. I'm glad that you shared with the world and the football world that we already
it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, we got a peg. Tua is going to the Chargers. I just wonder what pick. I wish you could have given us a little more insight so we can kind of know what's going to happen on draft day.
The best thing is my wife's not really a football fan, so Tua, she doesn't even know
who,
how.
Yeah,
it's just that's what I was telling the doc. So, anyways, it's kind of a funny story there. All right, Buck, we've got the quarterbacks here. I want to talk about Tua amongst all these other guys, but as we get into talking about what we're looking to see from these guys at the Combine, I want to give you some numbers, and this is something I try and do on the Combine coverage, to just kind of give you an idea of what's playing in the NFL. And this is kind of an arbitrary stat, but just looking at passing touchdowns, right? So the top 12 quarterbacks in terms of passing touchdowns. Doesn't mean they're the 12 best, but they are, they're succeeding, they're productive NFL players. And so when you pull their numbers, their Combine measurables, this is what we come out to. The biggest of the bunch, 6'5" and a quarter, 237 pounds. That's Carson Wentz, right? 6'5" and a quarter, 237 pounds. Carson, he ended up running a 4.77 40 is what he ran. The slowest 40 of the bunch was a 4.97. That would be Jameis Winston, obviously the 30-30 man. The biggest hands of the bunch, 10 and a quarter inch hands. That's Russell Wilson, made up for some of the size. They're huge hands. Aaron Rodgers, another one who's not a huge guy, but big hands. When you look on the bottom end of the scale, you're going to see basically it's Russell Wilson here. 5'10" and 5'8". That's Russell. 204 pounds. That's Russell Wilson. But the fastest of the bunch, 4.55. Yeah, also Russell Wilson. So Russell, undersized, but has the big hands, was very athletic. And the smallest hand size, because you'll hear a lot about hand size as we go through this process, 9 1/4. So 9 has kind of always been that magic number for hands. You don't want to go underneath 9, and this does kind of show that a little bit. 9 1/4 inch hands.
Who's that?
Which is Jimmy Garoppolo, 9 1/4. Pat Mahomes, 9 1/4. So those are the guys that are right there. But if you want to look at the averages, so take those 12 guys, 6'2" and 3/8", which, remember, it wasn't that long ago. Everybody was like 6'4", 6'5". No, now it's 6'2" and 3/8", 222 pounds. Average is a 4'8", 240 with 9 3/4 inch hands. That's the average of the top 12 guys in terms of passing touchdowns. So that's kind of, I would say, the bar that you're looking for right there.
Yeah, I mean, new standard. It is funny how the height thing has kind of come down, in terms of like what we were looking for. Before, we were looking for that statuesque quarterback, the guy that was the prototypical pocket passer that could stand and be the gunslinger. He kind of looked like John Wayne. He was able to win the shootouts and all that. I think what has happened, obviously, we've had a seismic shift at the position in terms of seeing more mobile playmakers have success in the league, more of those guys that are dual threat guys. And even if you're not a dual threat, you have to be a quarterback who has athleticism. You have to be able to escape. You have to be able to elude and evade. And the more that you can buy time, the better it is for the play caller. And so the game is where it is so hard to block those pass rushers up front that it's hard to just be a guy that kind of sits back and stands on the grassy knoll and launches these balls, because you just don't have the offensive tackles that can consistently hold up against what I call these Olympic athletes that are coming off the edge. And so the more athleticism and escapability that the quarterback has, the better it is for the offense.
Let me read off some of the heights here real quick of these guys, just so you kind of get in your mind when we say 6'2" and 3/8", kind of that 6'2" quarterback being the mark. Lamar Jackson, 6'2" 1/4. Dak Prescott, 6'2" 1/4. Jimmy Garoppolo, 6'2" 1/4. Aaron Rodgers, 6'2". Deshaun Watson, 6'2" 1/2. Pat Mahomes, 6'2". Kirk Cousins, 6'2" and 5/8". Like, these guys are all. That's kind of. It's it's kind of funny how that works out. It's kind of like that sweet spot right there, that 6'2" height.
Yeah, no, the 6'2" height is the sweet spot, and I know a lot of people would try and measure the athleticism by looking at the straight 40. I think the thing that would be interesting to dig into would be like, I wonder what those guys did in the 3-cone. I wonder what some of their agility numbers were like. We're not asking the quarterback to be an Olympic level athlete, but what we're asking them to have is an adequate amount of athleticism to be able to enable the offensive coordinator to be able to do some of the stuff, some of the zone read stuff, some of the things that he can erase the bad play calls by being able to kind of move around and step and slide in the pocket and maybe even run on the perimeter. It's just a different time, and it's crazy how quickly it's changing at the position.
Yeah, it's interesting just to look at those top 12. Of those top 12, you know how many ran over a 5-flat 40? 0. So it used to be back in the day with quarterbacks, you'd see a lot of those sprinkled in the combine, a lot of those 5+ 40s. None of them in this top 12 group. So you speak to it, Buck. You don't have to be a 4-5 guy, but you've got to be able to move around a little bit, have some of that functional athletic ability. Let's go through what we're looking to see from some of these quarterbacks here at the combine, Buck, and we can kind of we can work off your list. I know you just pumped out your top 5, which folks can find NFL.com/Bucky Brooks. You can find all Bucky's lists there of his top 5 quarterbacks. So why don't you start us off, Buck? We'll work through your top 5 and talk about what you think we need to see from these guys at the combine.
Well, obviously the biggest news in my top 5 list, I had Tua Tagovailoa at the top of the charts. And DJ, I think the big thing for Tua, obviously, you won't get a chance to see him work out. I think what may be lost on the outside when it comes to the Tua conversation and evaluation is the kid, is the character part of it that will blow people away when he sits across from them. We all have talked about sitting in the room, and when the guy walks in the room, you can just tell. They captivate the room. Everyone is kind of sitting on the edges of their seat, listening to them. They have a commanding presence, one that you can tell will radiate in the locker room. I think Tua has that. And so we won't get a chance to physically see him, but evaluators will get a chance to meet him. And yes, they'll track the progress of the hip and kind of see where that is, but they will really get a chance to see, hey, who is this guy? Where is he at in terms of his football IQ and his development, his character? Can we envision him being the leader of our franchise? Could we trust him to be the CEO of the brand? And I think the more people get to know him, the more the conversation is going to shift like, hey, wait a minute, like we were really high on Tua for most of the year, coming into the year, the middle of the season. Yes, he's had a series of injuries, but let's not just kind of completely dismiss him in terms of being QB1 potentially in this draft.
And can we say one thing here on just the draft in general, not even just the quarterbacks, but in general? If you say you like Tua a little bit more than you like Joe Burrow, I like Joe Burrow a little more than I like Tua. They're very close on my sequence list. I think people expect you, in order for you to be a Tua guy or a Burrow guy, you've got to trash the other one. And that's just not the case, man. To me, it's these two guys. There is a significant gap after them before you get to the next group of quarterbacks. That's where the cutoff is. So, as we go up to the draft, Bucky's is Tua over Burrow. I have Burrow over Tua. I'm not going to sit here and fight with you, Buck, because I really like Tua. There's a lot of things I really like about his game. The durability kind of is the tiebreaker for me, and that's why I go in the other direction with Burrow. But man, there's a lot to like about Tua's game. And I wrote down when I was taking my notes from my paper and putting it in the computer. The first thing I wrote down is that, to me, the image that sticks out in my mind is as a card dealer. If you've ever sat at a table or whatever and seen a professional card dealer, just how fast they just flip those cards all the way around the table, Buck, that's Tua. That's how he plays the game, with that quickness and just the ball just out right now. And that's how he does it. He doesn't have to push the ball 60 yards down the field every snap. Read it, identify it, get it out, boom, 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 boom. That's kind of how he plays the game.
It's funny that you said that, right? I host my radio show over the weekend, and one of the things, like my co-host asked, he said, hey, who does he kind of compare to? I said, well, when you see him physically, he is built like Russell Wilson, and his demeanor is probably a little more Russell-like than most. However, he plays the game in a manner that reminds you of Drew Brees. And so if you're an evaluator and I throw those two names out in a meeting, you're going to look around and be like, well, I'll sign up for that. I'll sign up for that all day if I get a combination of Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. And so, look, I think he's a terrific player. The biggest thing is going to be the health concerns, and everyone is going to say this. And this comment will kind of cloud both of the evaluations in terms of Tua and Joe Burrow. Oh, they play with five-star playmakers on the outside. They got all these receivers and whatever. And I'll say this. Great teams have great players. There's a reason why Alabama's always in the mix. There's a reason why LSU won a national championship. There's a reason why Trevor Lawrence at Clemson has guys around him. Championship caliber teams have championship caliber players more than just at one spot. And so it's one of those things where you're going to be challenged when you're doing the evaluation to be able to project those throws and see, can he make tight window throws? Can he throw with touch timing and anticipation? How does his game translate to the league when everything is sped up and a little faster? And I'll say with both of these guys, Tua and Joe Burrow, both of their games translate really, really well to the league.
Yeah, especially with the way the game's played right now. Quick feet, quick eyes, quick arm. He's going to destroy people in the RPO game. He's really good there. The base that he throws from is so firm. His feet are always in the ground and planted. He can manipulate safeties with his eyes. That shows some maturity there and some development throughout your process to be able to do that at this age. Again, it comes down to durability, injury. I mean, that to me is kind of what you've got to let your doctors decide how comfortable you are. So we're not going to see him at the combine throw, but we are, he's going to get a chance to meet with these teams, get on the board, and kind of wow those teams with his presence as well as his intelligence. So that's going to be his challenge there. But the biggest thing, obviously, will be the medical. All right, you mentioned Burrow next there, Buck. What do you want to see there?
Look, man, this is a great player. And I don't know what Joe Burrow is going to do, but I think coming in, he's already checked off so many boxes that you look for in a franchise quarterback. Tough, athletic, competitive, high football IQ, great vision player. He is a guy, obviously, where people are talking about him being an all-state basketball player. I think that served him well. I think he plays the game like a John Stockton in his heyday, like just a distributor, playmaker, leader, does all of those things. The biggest thing, and he won't be able to answer for it now, is just getting around him and being able to say, hey, man, your game really went from 5 to 10. your senior season? What would you attribute that to? And let him talk about the development, the personal development that he had, and then let him weave in, hey, Joe Brady, this offense, I had mastery of the offense, how we played, the people around. I just would like to hear that conversation, because I think that conversation will really lead you to believe, look, Joe Burrow can take what he did at LSU, and that will continue to work well in the National Football League. And I think so much of it is like when you're making this debate and conversation between Tua and Burrow, and you talk about the one-year production, and people may hear that and say, oh, you're saying he's a one-year wonder. No, you're not saying that. You just – like if you have to have questions for all these guys, you just kind of want to know, well, what was the difference in your junior year and your senior year? Why did it pop? Why did it explode so much for you? And then just hear it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I'm gonna have a chance to kind of put all these numbers in context and side by side when we get to the combine coverage as well on network. But the interesting thing about the Tua and Burrow discussion is we talked about it the other day with Burrow having thrown more passes in college than Tua, almost 300, I think, more attempts.
Yeah.
So he's played football. He's played some football. And the interesting thing is, if you kind of look at both being with great players, which would be, you know, accepted by everybody, like you mentioned, Buck, I think if you looked at their performance against the top tier competition, because their teams are so good, you know, 60% of the schedule for or for LSU and for Alabama, they're just going to be so much better than everybody they play against. But when they played against better competition, I think those numbers steer and stack a little bit in Joe Burrow's favor, even though we concede they're both playing with great players. But he had a lot of quality games against quality competition, whereas some of these other quarterbacks, when you're looking at them, you know, go with an Eason or, you know, if you look at the whole list of other guys, Jordan Love, they might have played against 3 or 4 quality opponents during their career. This guy played against 7 or 8 of them in 1 year.
Look, what Joe Burrow did this year was nothing short of remarkable. It can be safely categorized as maybe the greatest season that we've ever seen a college football player have in history. The amount of top 10 teams that they took down, who he played against, how he dominated them, what they looked like when you watched the tape. Look, he took his game up a notch. And I will say this, the maturity that he displayed, obviously he's a fifth-year player, so he's been around. You're talking about 22, 23 years old. Just from a cognitive standpoint, it should put you in a position to be a leader to handle those moments, and he did. And so I don't know how you can take that away from him. He's just a really, really good football player, a guy who should have tremendous success in the National Football League. And I think when it comes down to these two guys, it's unfortunate they won't be able to go toe-to-toe in terms of at the combine. It's really just a matter of, and I've said this comparison, I said it's a matter of Tony Romo and Drew Brees from a stylistic standpoint. Like, what would you prefer to have as your QB1? And I don't think you can go wrong with either player. It's just a matter of who do you envision being your quarterback of the next 10 years?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I will last thing I'll add on Burrow, Buck. You always use the term family business. You know, this guy's dad's a college defensive coordinator for 14 years. So when most people come home and they go to the dinner table when you're a 12-year-old kid and dad's talking about who he sold insurance to that day, this guy's talking about what offense they're playing against and what kind of stunts they're going to run. And this is kind of how this kid grew up. And I think that shows. And no matter what he does, you know, I don't know that we're going to see him do a lot at the combine in terms of the physical activity, but in terms of meeting with the teams, I think that football knowledge will serve him quite well. Yeah,
I think it will serve him quite well. And also, like, I talked a lot about, like, having an opportunity to sit across from Tua Tagovailoa and how he'll be impressive to evaluate. So I think Joe Burrow will be just as impressive, if not even more impressive. I think the one thing that I sense from Joe Burrow, having watching him from afar, man, his confidence, his swag, his belief in himself and his talents is undeniable. Like, he brims with confidence, and I think his real, genuine confidence. A lot of people throw the term swag loosely around. No, Joe Burrow has it, and I think at the end of the day, after the national championship, where these pictures have leaked out with him just kind of sitting on the throne with a cigar in his hand or whatever, like it's almost some Joe Namath stuff. Now, I won't necessarily condone smoking a stogie, but I just think he kind of speaks to his character and who he is. He is a man who believes that he can take on all comers. And look, we've talked about it, and you have used this when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks. not over my dead body, the attitude and the force with which they play, Joe Burrow has that, so it's easy to bank on him.
No doubt. All right, who do you got going down through this list here?
So, look, next is Justin Herbert. And we talked about Justin Herbert a little bit, like coming from the Senior Bowl. I think the big thing for Justin Herbert, can people get comfortable with the what appears to be a very quiet persona? Like, he seems to be kind of introverted. Can his personality work in an NFL locker room? I think having been around him at the Senior Bowl, look, he played well. I think he did himself well by being around there. He won MVP. He played well, but more importantly, when you watched him interact with teammates, watched him lead, watched him practice, I think you come away with a better sense of who he is. I think this guy's talented, and I think the thing that he can't answer. I kind of want to know the up and down performances against big teams. We talked about the Auburn game. We talked about some of the other moments that he has had last year in the bowl game. Didn't necessarily play his best. So which Justin Herbert is going to show up in the National Football League? Through conversations, I would like to get to know him a little better so I can get a better sense of like how he's built, how he's constructed, what is this football character like, and how is that character going to be conveyed to his teammates.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about Justin Herbert. When you talk about the size, the mobility, the arm strength, there's some wow throws. You saw some design quarterback run game, what he can do there. I went back and rewatched the SC game the other day.
Yeah.
He was more aggressive with his legs in that one. The opportunity to present itself, take it and go. Wanted to see a little bit more of that throughout his career than maybe we saw, especially this year. There's some, in terms of what are you looking for at the combine, there's a couple mechanical things that I put down here that I really want to keep an eye on, watch him throw, because sometimes his front shoulder flies open, and when that happens, his accuracy suffers in a big way, and you'll have some bad misses. So can you keep your front shoulder tucked in? That's one thing. And number two, and it's almost a feel thing, but when I watch him, I wrote down several times, like, he's guiding the football. Stop, just let it rip, man. Just throw it. And he's trying to guide it, trying to make a perfect throw instead of just throwing the ball. And when he does that, it kind of affects and impacts his touch. So, I want to see that. Just let it rip. Don't guide the football. Keep your front shoulder in. Don't fly open. And let's see, how he throws the football, because the velocity is going to be there, Buck. He's got a huge arm. We know he's a really good athlete. He's a 4+ student, in terms of 4.0+ student. He's phenomenal in terms of his intelligence. So I want to see a more consistent thrower. And the one thing we can't see at the combine is I just want to see an overall more aggressive attacking style and demeanor on the field, and that's something we're not going to get to see in Indy.
No, it's funny. So you brought up a couple of things that stand out to me. You talked about him feeling like he's guiding the ball, like he didn't let it go. And DJ, in my experience, sometimes when you have high IQ players and athletes, because they want to succeed and they want everything to be perfect, it's hard for them to kind of cut it loose and just kind of play freely. Whereas when you look at Joe Burrow and you look at even Tua, like, man, they just kind of rip it. They just kind of play. They play through their mistakes. They don't worry about it. And I would like to get around Justin and just know, hey, man, look, it's okay to have a mistake. And I think for Justin Herbert more than any other person, I believe the coach and who is directly in touch with him at the next level matters. His quarterback coach, his head coach, particularly if it's a head coach that's offensive playmaker, what is their personalities like? Because I'm not saying this as a knock for Justin Herbert, but I believe he needs a nurturer more so than a hard-nosed, grinded-out coach. I think a nurturer...
More carrot than stick.
Yeah, I think a nurturer would kind of bring that out in him, and I think you'll see him blossom. I think if you have one of those hard-nosed, grizzled guys that is kind of on him, whacking his hand with the ruler every day, I think that doesn't play to the strong parts of his personality, and I don't know if we'll ever see him unlock his full potential and his game.
No doubt. All right, who's next, Buck?
After that, I had Jordan Love, and part of the fascination, I believe, with Jordan Love stems from what we call the Pat Mahomes bounce. You and I sat here a few years ago when Pat Mahomes came in. We had him top 5s, top 50 lists. Like, we weren't sure on what he would be. In fact, I found a clip, like, Nabil, you can find this on Twitter, where at the Combine when Pat Mahomes was coming out, I'm like, hey, he's a sandlot player. I don't know if I've ever seen this work in the league. I mean, look, it's a bad comparison now, but I compared him to Jay Cutler in terms of how he played. When I saw Jay Cutler play at Vanderbilt, Jay Cutler had to take a cast of no names and kind of do everything, and he was very reckless with the football. The Pat Mahomes that I watched at Texas Tech was kind of like that. I say that because when I look at Jordan Love, here's an interesting thing. What if Jordan Love's years were flipped, DJ? Meaning that the way that he performed this year was last year, and the way that he performed last year was this year. What would that conversation be?
Be a top 10 pick.
Right. So now, as an evaluator, do you look at the entire body of work? How do you characterize the previous year compared to this year? Like, how much weight do you put into that when the circumstances were different, who was around him, and the like? Because maybe I'm low on him just based on the way that he finished up his career. Maybe if we go back and look at everything and really study everything, maybe he does deserve to be up there with Herbert. Maybe he deserves to be ahead of Herbert. Like, he's talented. It's just a matter of sequencing the years to understand who he is and what he is.
Here's the thing. If you like Justin Herbert, or if you like Jordan Love, you are making the comparison to Mahomes.
Yep.
And you're saying you reverse the years, and that's what you're running with. And the 2018 is the real Jordan Love, and we're going to get the next Pat Mahomes. If you're not a Jordan Love guy, you're saying, oh my gosh, this is DeShone Kizer all over again. He might have given you some hope earlier on in his career, but we saw what he was at the end, and he tried to tell you who he was. You got to believe him. So that's the two edges of the spectrum here that we're talking about. I wrote down just the hero ball, Buck. I mean, he was so impressive in 18, and then the turnovers came in bunches. Obviously lost 9 starters, head coach, offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of reasons for that. When you see the skills, he's fluid and loose, explosive. The ball jumps out of his hand. He makes these off-platform throws that are incredible. And I've been Love over Herbert. They're riding next to each other. I got a lot more I want to dig into and study with these two before I eventually make that final call before we get to the draft. It's a marathon and not a sprint here, Buck. But I'll tell you what, it's challenging my courage because I just went through and did all the linebackers for the Combine. And so I spent 2 or 3 days just plowing through all the guys I hadn't done yet and knocked out linebackers and got to one and I said, whoa, nice interception versus Jordan Love. I mean, I write that in my notes. I can talk about that at the Combine. He picked off Jordan Love. 3 linebackers later, nice little pick there on Jordan Love. I make sure I talk about this. And then after about the 3rd or 4th time I saw it, I said, this is not an accomplishment. Everybody that they played against got interceptions against this dude. So it is challenging my courage and conviction as an evaluator when you're going and doing all these defensive players and you see all these picks and then you see drop picks. So, man, the turnovers, we see it with a guy like Jameis, right? Those turnovers. You see it even with Darnold. I love Sam Darnold, but some of those issues he had have carried over in terms of some of the turnovers. That stuff sticks with you. So, I want to believe that 2018 is the real version, but I can't. 2019 is still there. You can't divorce yourself from that.
Yeah, it's funny, and I think it's tough. DJ, like what's interesting about it, and it would be great, and maybe this is an exercise that I'll do, but if I could play matchmaker with quarterback and coach. Because a lot of Pat Mahomes' success, I would say, can be directly attributed to Andy Reid. Not necessarily that Andy Reid deserves all of the credit for Pat Mahomes' success, but what Andy Reid has been able to do. He coached Pat Mahomes into playing winning football. And of all the quarterbacks in NFL history, Pat Mahomes has the 3rd lowest interception rate. He's right behind Aaron Rodgers, who's first, and Tyrod Taylor is actually second. But Pat Mahomes learned how to harness some of the gunslinger and to avoid some of the hero ball. With Jordan Love, I would want to know how amenable is he to being able to play winning football? Can he turn down the extra cookie that is hanging on the shelf and be like, no, I don't want the cookie. I'm going to go get a piece of fruit because I don't want my sweet tooth to pack on a couple more pounds. If he can do that, if he can avoid those hero moments that lead to turnovers while still retaining some of that aggressiveness and assertiveness from the pocket, I mean, you could be unlocking a potential superstar at the position. I'm not calling him Pat Mahomes, but I do see enough of him to say, look, I can envision this guy being a player who plays at a high level in the league and kind of has us wondering, man, why didn't we take him sooner?
Yeah, the only thing I would add there on the Mahomes comparison, and we've both gone on record say we wish we had a do-over on this one, but Mahomes last year, Buck, his touchdown interceptions, he was plus 31.
Yeah.
He was 41 touchdowns, 10 picks, plus 31. Jordan Love was plus 3.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem.
So, a couple more goods in his column to offset the 10 picks. So, anyways, it's going to be – he's a fascinating one, Buck. But, there's those moments where you give a guy a grade and then all of a sudden you start doing other guys and he starts popping up on tape doing stuff you don't like and you go, oh, boy.
Oh, boy. I know.
Challenge your conviction a little bit on that one.
The next one that I had on my list was Jacob Eason from University of Washington.
Yeah.
Eason is interesting because when it comes to the physical traits, he has it all. Like, he has a big arm. I mean, a tremendous arm. He can make all the throws that you want to see. Very, very talented. Arguably one of the more talented, if not the most talented player in the class. But what you see is inconsistencies in terms of the accuracy, inconsistent performance. Look, he didn't have a lot around him at UW this year. You also have to go back and try and figure out how come he couldn't fend off Jake Fromm at Georgia. But from a talent perspective, he's intriguing. He's enticing. And I can see a team that already has a quarterback in place pulling the trigger on Jacob Eason and trying to develop just a little bit more before he becomes a starter for a team.
Yeah, he is a big, strong pocket passer who makes some. You talk about wow throws. I mean, he has got a huge arm. And there's some games you watch, the Oregon game, Utah, he played pretty well in that one as well. Good competition. He played really well. Then you watch like the Stanford game and some other games, and you just kind of left scratching your head. The touch and the anticipation are two areas he's got to improve on. Now, I don't know how much at the combine you're going to get to see that because he's working with all these receivers he doesn't know. The arm strength will be evident. You'll see that jump off. But just being able to layer the ball, touch the ball up a little bit, not everything hard and flat, that's going to be a challenge for him. And the other thing I would say is he's got some bad habits pocket movement-wise. He tries to spin out of everything. You never want to turn your back on the defense unless it's absolutely necessary. He does it all the time. So some of those drills where you see guys climb up, move around the pocket, I want to see how comfortable he is kind of getting off his spot and then throwing the football.
So, DJ, listening to you and talking about him, and when I did the evaluation, I don't know if you can improve touch and anticipation. I don't know if you can do it. I think it may be one of those situations where a coach can help you by creating bigger windows, meaning play action. You're able to kind of mask, like guys who have problems with touch and anticipation. What you can do is you can be a real heavy play action team so the windows are bigger, so they're throwing to these huge voids rather than having to kind of like throw guys open. And maybe you can do some of that, but with the systems that are being run today, the teams that kind of use those things, Minnesota with Kirk Cousins, San Francisco 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo, your quarterback has to be mobile enough to kind of get outside and do some of those things so you can always change the spot. So Jacob Eason's athleticism will need to come up big. He needs to show that he's a mobile athlete. And as you talked about, the escapability and some of those climb and escape drills, he has to show that he's light enough on his feet to be able to do things when the pocket collapses, and he won't just kind of be a sitting duck, that you have to have a fortress in front of him or he's non-functional.
No doubt. So it'll be good. It's interesting to see his athletic testing there at the combine. I think you make a great point there, Buck. All right, what's the next one?
So now we're out at the top 5, and I think the best way to do it is just kind of pick a couple guys that we think are interesting. The two guys that kind of stand out for me is kind of like the next tier, the honorable mentions, will be Jake Fromm and Jalen Hurts. And Jake Fromm, what you have is a guy who just understands how to get the guard to the winner's circle. He plays winning football, and when surrounded with premier talent, look, he just does enough to keep his team winning. He's smart. He's tough. I give him credit because in this quarterback room at Georgia, he had to fend off Jacob Eason and Justin Fields, two guys that I would say are more talented than him, yet he was the last one standing. And so there has to be something in him, a grit, a toughness, a resiliency that enables him to not worry about the competitors, but to focus on the job and the production and the performance. I think that's positive. Now, the arm talent and all of that stuff, look, it's not overwhelming. It's not overpowering. It's not like overly impressive in that regard. But look, he has enough to be able to be a starting quarterback. We've seen starting quarterbacks with this skill set play in the league. I think the main thing is trying to figure out where does he fit in that quarterback landscape, and can I envision him being a starter, and what does he need around him to be a successful starter in the league?
Yeah, he's a fascinating one because it is a classic case of the traits versus the intangibles. The intangibles are out of sight. I mean, the leadership, the intelligence, all that stuff, personality, football knowledge, it's all off the charts. But the traits in terms of just the pure arm strength, the pure athletic ability, very pedestrian, very average. I do think he does have a little bit more life in his arm to come. I think there's some development there, and I know he's been working with David Morris, one of our buddies down there at QB Country, and I went and got a chance to watch him throw. I just think he needs to develop and incorporate more of his lower body. He's got a strong base when you see him physically. He's got a thick lower, but he disassociates too much. He's got to get his legs, get his cleats in the ground, really power and drive off your backside. I think he'll be able to generate a touch more velocity there, so that can improve. The whole thing though, putting him in an offense, Buck, a rhythm, timing offense, the exact opposite what we just talked about with Eason. With him, I think you want to just get your back foot, get the ball out of your hands, and stay in that rhythm on schedule. I think he can be a functional player. He just, in terms of driving the ball in those tight windows, that's going to be a little bit of a concern.
Okay, so we love to do comparisons in the scouting world, right? We love to do it in the room. And because I'm going to ask you this question point blank, Jake Fromm or Aaron Murray, just based on what you saw in college?
Oh, I'd take Jake Fromm. I think he's better. He's better than Murray. I would say, and this people will probably take this as a negative here, but I actually think he's like a souped up version of a Chase Daniel.
Ooh.
Chase Daniel's been in the NFL for a long time. Chase Daniel started games and won games. He's been one of the better backups, I would say. I think Jake Fromm is a better version of that, meaning he's in the right perfect situation, he can be a functional starter. But worst case scenario, you've got a high floor, you're going to have a high value backup. But I like him better than Aaron Murray.
Cool, and I'm with that. But you know how when we sit in rooms, because he went to Georgia and because Aaron Murray's not too far in the rear view, there'd be a coach or executive like, hey, look, Aaron Murray came out of there. Where would he compare? Like plus or minus, and then you kind of shape that, and then you're trying to figure out like, okay, well, where does that slot? Where do I like him at? And I think what you said, the description, high end QB2, low end QB1, like just hey, where does that fit in the mix? In my mind, just listening to the description, we're talking about third round, fourth round, somewhere in that third to fourth round, that borderline day two category, depending on how your team is constructed and how you view him after you have the conversation with him, with the intangibles and stuff. And look, everyone is looking for that guy that can kind of come from the lower ranks and succeed. Remember, Dak Prescott was a fourth-round player. Kirk Cousins was a first-round player, fourth-round player. Everyone would talk about Tom Brady. But last year, we just saw Gardner Minshew be a sixth-round player to start games in the league. Everyone is looking for, hey, who's that guy that maybe I can find outside of the first round that potentially could start games? Maybe, just maybe, Jake Fromm is the guy that can do that.
I was thinking of a guy. What's the difference? You asked me a comparison. I'm going to ask you a comparison. Jake Delhomme.
Ooh, God, that's a good comparison, man. So like Jake Delhomme is a really good comparison because Jake Delhomme, when I was at Carolina, he was our starting quarterback. Obviously, we went to the Super Bowl with him, went to a championship game with him, and he came up. I think the big thing with Jake was a bit of a gunslinger, and when Jake stayed within himself and stayed true to, look, here are my talents. Here's how I need to play. We had Steve Smith and Muhsin Muhammad, had people around him. Offense looked good, strong running game. We won. The only time we would get in trouble with Jake is when Jake tried to be someone that he's not. When he tried to be the gunslinger and act like he had the big arm and he could make all these throws, then the turnovers would come in bunches. Jake Fromm, if he stays true to himself, Jake Fromm can certainly win a lot of games for a team that is already kind of functional and ready to go. And so
defense, run game, all that.
Yeah, and so the lower he goes in terms of round, the better it is for him because he'll go to a better team. But if Jake Fromm goes to a situation where they don't have much around him, he's not going to upgrade that situation. He's not going to change that around. So, look, what you said, high end, high-end QB2, low-end QB1. I think that's who he is. I think he's one of those borderline starters that can play if everything is right around him.
No doubt. You said one more. We got Hurts
here.
Oh,
Jalen Hurts. So, look, that conversation is the same with Jalen Hurts. It's a little different. The intangibles, people would say, the intangibles are solid. The way he handled the Tua situation in Alabama, he was so successful playing in two systems, one under Nick Saban, then playing in Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley, it enabled him to show a little different side of himself in terms of as a player. We saw the running skills at both places, but he was a better passer at Oklahoma than he was at Alabama, and he has grown. Thick lower body, can run. I always, whenever I look at him from the first time I saw him, he really reminds me of Dak Prescott. Like it or love it, whatever you think about Dak Prescott, I think Jalen Hurts is kind of in that same category. Maybe not quite the passer that Dak was, because Dak was a little more accomplished at Mississippi State as a passer, but leader, playmaker, toughness. I think their strengths lie in the man that they are, the men that they are, how they lead, how they command the locker room, and those things. So, look, I think he's going to have a chance, but if you're going to ask me, the same grade and category that we put on Jake Fromm is the same grade that I'm put on Jalen Hurts. I think he's one of those borderline day 2, day 3 guys, and I think in the right situation, it will work for him. But, we just have to see because the league is changing, but I just kind of have him right at that line. Bottom of the 3rd round, top of the 4th round is where I think he will hear his name called.
He's a great example of your analogy that you've thrown out there about scorers, not shooters, because if you want to grade him as just a pocket passer and grade him as somebody who has great vision, which I don't think he has great vision, great anticipation, which I don't think he has great anticipation, you're going to ding him. But he's another one. When I'm doing other players, Buck, and I always want to watch him against good competition, I watch him against Oklahoma. And doing those defensive players, and I see a lot of Oklahoma offense, what I've been going through the last week or two, I'm starting to appreciate more of Jalen Hurts' game, which is he's a playmaker. That's what he does. He creates plays, he extends plays, quarterback design run, hit a big shot down the field. Now, he's going to hold the ball and take a bad sack. He's going to miss some windows where he's got guys open and you'll have blown opportunities. But at the end of the day, are you producing points? Are you moving the football, and are you producing points? And Jalen Hurts did that at a very high level, really at 2 schools. He did it at Alabama and won a bunch of football games doing it, then went to Oklahoma. And I think the trend is headed in the right direction. I don't think he's ever going to be personally, I don't think he's ever going to be Dak Prescott as a passer. I don't think he's as polished as Dak. But a younger Dak Prescott, he's going to come on the field, Buck, and just make plays and find a way to move the football and score points. And I think some team's going to fall in love with him. I really do.
Don't ask me why I have this in my mind, considering the number of guys that they brought in at the position. But I think Jalen Hurts would be a perfect fit in Pittsburgh. I think he just kind of strikes me as a Pittsburgh-type player.
That toughness,
Toughness, reliability, dependability, the way they may be trending back to being a running team with the defense where you just need the guy, hey, make a couple plays, don't turn it over, play winning football, sacrifice your own individual numbers, let's just do it for the team. I think in that environment, he works, and so it'll be interesting to see how he throws the ball around the yard, how he handles all this stuff. Because we've had a couple of interactions with him. He's kind of quiet, even in interviews, doesn't appear to kind of let people in, kind of talks in coach speak. I do want to know what he's like in that room with those 15 minutes. Will he bare his soul to interviewers and let them know who he is? Because I think it's really critical for him more than anybody else. He has to get people to fall in love with the person more so than the performance and the athlete. If they fall in love with the person and the character, I think he'll have a chance. And so that is what I'm curious. Also, another situation that might be good for him, how about him backing up Russell Wilson in Seattle? Like a situation where they value that. They're not close to being the same player, but I think Pete and the way they do it, because they push the ball down the field, they don't do a lot of touch timing and anticipation type routes. I think a situation like that behind Russell could be a good spot for him.
I'm going to give you one more, and I'm just thinking about this. The more I'm looking at this and thinking about it, the more it makes just perfect sense. What about the the Las Vegas Raiders? They always say when you break up with somebody, you go get the exact opposite. And play style, I would say he's the exact opposite of Derek Carr. But if they want somebody who's going to, add to this toughness that they've tried to instill last year's draft, right? We talked about foundation pieces. Those were Mayock's words when he talked about the kind of guys they were trying to bring in there. Toughness, physicality. That was their MO last year. Well, if you want to get that at that position, that's Jalen Hurts is that guy in this draft. If you want somebody to be able to be involved with Josh Jacobs, his old college teammate there at Alabama, and some of the run game stuff, and just if you're going to try and compete with Kansas City, you're going to either get in a track meet or you're going to try and slug it out with them. And I think that right now the Oakland Raiders might be more equipped to try and slug it out and just beat them up as opposed to run around them.
Yeah, look, and I've seen this firsthand. I saw what John Gruden did with Rich Gannon and Rich Gannon's traits. Like, you got to remember when Rich Gannon came out of Delaware, obviously this is before I was in the business, before I even started playing. Look, he was such an athlete that they considered moving him to safety, and he had to kind of stop people from doing that because he felt like he was a quarterback at Washington, then in Minnesota, then coming to Kansas City where we played together, and then also in Oakland where we also were together. And so there is something to what you're pointing out about toughness. You have to have the right toughness. You got to be the right kind of guy to kind of ingratiate yourself to John Gruden. Yeah, Jalen Hurts in that situation, I can see it working.
All right, let's maybe highlight one other guy that you're looking for kind of out of that pile that you're looking forward to seeing here and what you want to see from him.
Okay, so DJ, we talked about this prior to coming on. Like, look, once you get to this section or whatever, everyone is looking for who is the late round guy that can be the next Gardner Minshew. And I'm going to say, look, the guy that replaced Gardner Minshew at Washington State. How about Anthony Gordon? We saw Anthony Gordon throw the ball around a little bit down to the Senior Bowl, got the ball out of his hands. It's just kind of like a player. And I think sometimes you just have to watch those guys and they can get it out, they can function, they can kind of distribute and do some things. And now, because we're seeing more of the air raid quarterbacks have success, I'm willing to kind of take a flyer on Anthony Gordon, because one of the things that's beginning to resonate and show, reps at the quarterback position matter more now than they ever have. The more guys throw, the better they get when it comes to their opportunity to succeed in the league. When you play for Mike Leach, you throw it all over the yard. He's done it. I think that might serve him well as a guy that could be a late-round pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go – there's another one that was in that game in the Senior Bowl. I'm going to go Steven Montez as somebody just to keep an eye on. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. He's a big, strong dude. He's got a real live arm. I just thought some of the stuff with him with pressure, he struggled, just kind of getting off your spot, making reactionary plays. So you're not really going to see that at the Combine, but I think what you will see is you'll see a big, strong guy who can really let it rip. And he's not a bad athlete. So he's one I would keep an eye on, kind of as that day three, kind of quarterback to keep an eye on. I think there's some tools there. I think there's some ability there. There's a play against Washington I wrote down in my notes, Buck. They have late in that game. They end up beating Washington. They were on a quarterback sneak. He got 12 yards on a quarterback sneak. I don't know what that means, but it was very unusual. It was noteworthy. 12 yards on a quarterback sneak. What the heck?
Man, look, it speaks to the athleticism, I guess, like being able to get that and the toughness that he kept on going.
I don't know what it means, but it was weird. It was weird. All right, man. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
No, I think that's good. I think that's a good preview. I can't wait until we get a chance to see these guys kind of do it in prime time and then talk about it after the Combine.
Yep, we will definitely do that. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed it. We look forward to watching these guys work out. Hopefully you'll join us. NFL Network, NFL.com will have all of our coverage from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. The workouts, they will get going on Thursday. So anyways, we got you covered right here on Move the Sticks up into the Combine, and we'll have everything you need as we react to it as well. He's Bucky Brooks. I'm Daniel Jeremiah. Nice job, Nabil, producing this thing. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.